Beyond.
Beyond.
Beyond?
Yes, yeah,
we have
perfect.
to do that at
Nailed
the
it.
top of every episode.
Okay.
Should
We did it.
Should we do it again?
It's okay. We can do it again.
We good? One more time.
I think we're good. Beyond.
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 Perfect.
That's it. That's the name of the show.
did
We
it.
do that every episode.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Podcast Beyond, episode 530 or something. My name is Max Scoville, and I'm joined by Brian Altano.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, like, share, subscribe, and sound off in the comments below.
Right, cool it over there.
All right.
And Chloe Rad.
Hello.
So normally we have a whole lot of people here, and they've all come down with very bad cases of Super Bowls disorder, so they will not be here with us. I don't know where Marty and Alana and Zach and all them are, but they're not here.
It's weird that like a day that's dedicated to drinking then is followed by a day where people don't show up at work. I wonder if there's a connection between those things. But we're here because we're good. We're good
And
people.
I get to be on instead.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
No, I'm stoked. I love talking to you about games. You're good at digging into the weird parts of them, and you frequently send me strange messages of like something on the internet that I am fascinated by.
It's a thing that happens.
Weird photoshops and stuff like that. A game that I feel like kind of sort of almost came to my attention because of weird internet stuff is the Yakuza series, and I am happy to finally actually get to talk about Yakuza 6, Song of Life, which I got to play. And going along with that, we also got a nice announcement that it has been delayed, which sucks.
Isn't it out?
Yeah, it's been out in Japan for like a minute.
Okay.
December 2016, so it's been a while.
So it's been out for
Yeah.
some time. They've got to localize it. They got to add the the new translation and everything.
The loud American grunting sounds.
Yeah. So I mean, they don't even dub it. That's the weird part. But there is a lot of dialogue to kind of figure out and stuff. But I mean, I don't think this is a technical thing at all. I think this is probably just, I think they want to align it with something special. I don't know what. But the good news is that on February 27th, they're going to be dropping a demo for Yakuza 6 that will be available for everybody. It's, and it'll be free because it's a demo. And it will do the thing where it allows players to bring their save into the final game on release, which is awesome because we've talked about this before with, I think Wolfenstein did that. I want to say it was Prey maybe, where it was like,
Yeah, the Yakuza series has always struck me as this sort of like triumphantly like early 2000s or sort of PS2 era genre of game, and releasing a demo that lets you carry your save data over feels very much in line with that. I don't know, we talked about this before. I really miss PlayStation demos in general.
Me too.
We used to have entire discs
Those
of them.
demo discs were so awesome.
That was the best. Like it was
Pizza Hut one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome. It was such a cool way to just find out about a bunch of stuff and then plow through it and then go buy the full games.
I mean, it seems surprising we don't have more of that, in this day and age, because there's such an emphasis on like pre-orders, and I mean, we have like, it's the beta, sign up to join the beta, and it's like, I mean, if you have the opportunity to be like, here's a chunk of the game, you can play it and carry your save over, and that gets people hooked.
Do you think the difference is with YouTube, developers can basically do a perfect playthrough on their own, which we've read and heard about takes 6 months of basically perfect control and scripting, and then kind of control the conversation themselves and then just put out a demo that you can watch?
I guess I don't know. It's weird that everything is so like downloadable. So like, what's stopping you from getting a piece of the game there?
Right.
But that being said, I mean, I did get a chance to screw around with Yakuza 6. I'm gonna have a written preview up there, but basically, this is a series that people should be playing. This is a series that I think a lot of people kind of have sort of slept on because I think it was, let's see, 1 and 2 were on PS2, and 3 and 4 and 5 were PS3 exclusives, and what is it? They put out Zero and Kiwami, which was a prequel, which was Zero, and then Kiwami was a remake of the first one. And 6 is the first Yakuza game that's made specifically for PS4. But because a lot of people might have slept on the last, 5, 6 games, depending how you're counting, it's kind of scary to kind of jump into it,
But 6 does a really good job recapping. You mentioned in your preview.
Yeah. So it's I think that they know that this is a game that a lot of people are going to be coming at. The thing that I want to compare it to is The Witcher. I think in The Witcher 3, I jumped into that. I played a bunch of Witcher 2, and even that was like, I was like, I didn't play the first one. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm left out here. And I never finished Witcher 2. And then Witcher 3 I jumped into, and I was like, I really hope I know what's going on. And there's that feeling of like you're missing something, but once you kind of put that aside and just kind of focus on what's happening in front of you, you very quickly forget that you didn't, play the previous ones. And I feel like Yakuza 6 is really good with that based on what I've seen.
I know some of the other ones even had like a recap function, sort of, where it's like correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like an hour long, like just cutscene
Yeah,
explaining what the game is, because
they
these games are like hundreds of hours long.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, at a glance, I think there's like that mentality that this is like, oh, this is a game about like very hard hitting, serious, serious criminal underbelly stuff. But then there's also like
As you have this
insane-
adorable baseball
Yeah, there's like
minigame.
insane mini games. Like you can manage. This isn't even like regular baseball. This is like baseball management.
This game feels like a sort of drawn out, mature take on WarioWare.
I could kind of see that. It's like it's nuts how much just it's all about like activities, and I think there's you will quickly get very many like tons of people really mad at you if you compare it to Grand Theft Auto. But in the same way that GTA is like, hey, you're gonna go do some serious nasty crimes and do like mature stuff, they're also like you can also play tennis.
For me, I think that Yakuza does side quests so much better than the Grand Theft Auto games, which for me, like, I mean, I have enjoyed the Grand Theft Auto games, but so many of the missions are just kind of like driving from point A to point B while people are talking, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe you have a shootout or something. Like the writing for the side quests are some of like it's just like the most heartwarming sometimes stories, and you're playing this like badass like Yakuza dude. And I think like one of the missions that stood out for me the most in Yakuza 0 was like you're helping this really shy punk band who they're like afraid to perform in front of their fans, and you're kind of like trying to train them on like cool stuff to say.
That's awesome.
And it's just
You're teaching them how to be punk, and they're like, what's more punk than like being a Yakuza guy who beats up guys in the street?
Yeah, it just effortlessly moves from just like kicking the crap out of dudes to just like helping a sad cameraman like film a restaurant documentary.
Yeah, I mean, the sub stories and side quests are like they're kind of a bottomless pit in a really good way.
Yeah.
Yep.
I played through all of 0 and all of Kiwami. I went over to a friend's house like I don't know a couple weekends ago, and he was like, "Oh, I'm playing some Yakuza 0. You want to jump on this?" And I was like, "Sure. What are you doing?" And I'm like assuming that it would be a side quest that I saw, and it was a part that I totally hadn't seen where you're teaching a dominatrix how to be dominant.
Yeah, that's the
And
How did she get that job to begin with?
I honestly don't know. Those are the kind of questions you'll be asking yourself.
So I think a lot of that why it appeals to me, weird segue to jump in on like, oh, this appeals to me, is that like I really I love GTA 4 and 5. They're like incredible games, and I think their side quests and more so their mini games are really interesting in that they're so robust, right? Like there's golf, there's darts and bowling and stuff like that, but they all sort of feel like tonally serious, whereas older GTAs always felt a lot more goofier and lighthearted. And I think that's what is really cool about Yakuza is that like some of the footage we just saw here, like you go spearfishing and it's very arcadey, there's a lot more of a sort of like celebration of like goofy, lighthearted Japanese arcade culture. And I think within the more grounded reality of GTA 4 and 5, things need to feel a little bit more serious, and so they kind of lose that.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. I think somebody described it as Yakuza as being an open world game that's very compressed and very like it's much more kind of squished together. And the area you're covering is just physically it's less space, but it's very dense.
Yeah.
And that there are all these weird activities to do. Like you can go in and you can do karaoke, and it feels like a full-fledged rhythm game complete with like goofy stock video, like music video backup stuff.
Also, can we talk about like the recreation of the actual locations in the game? Like it's set primarily in Kamurocho, right? Which is kind of their version of Kabukicho, which is in Shinjuku, and it's like the red light district neighborhood. And it's like, as someone who has stayed in that neighborhood 2 years in a row, like, holy crap, it made me miss it so much. Like, it's
so cool.
There's like one-to-one almost like this miniature like Golden Guy too, like this little neighborhood of bars, and like everything is so lovingly recreated. Even like the convenience stores, like there's a Don Quixote, which is like
it's awesome. It's part of me is like, is this just product placement? But then on the other hand, I'm like, this is really authentic. Apparently in Yakuza 6, you still go back to Kamurocho. But they've adapted it based on, it takes place like a few years later than 5 or whatever, and they've adapted it based on how Kabukicho is presently. And apparently there's a lot of construction going on, so there's like all these cranes and stuff, and it's kind of, I think that probably comes into the story or something. But the PR guy I was talking to mentioned that there's a restaurant, like a famous restaurant in the neighborhood that I think either because of zoning or just because of locations, it moved across the street, and a restaurant based on that restaurant in the game changed locations too. So it's like weird little details like that the odds of that jumping out at you as a player is pretty slim.
Right.
But it's cool that it has all that.
Between that and like Persona 5, like and the recreation of like the train stations, the subways in Japan, like I'm so impressed by Japanese games and how just committed they are to recreating those spaces.
Yeah, it's weird because like if you live there, you're probably like, oh, that's pretty cool. But for people like us who have been there or people who have never been there, I think the level of like sort of escapism that happens there is so cool.
Yeah.
Like I was in Tokyo on vacation for like 8 days last year, and when I came back, it's all I could think about. And the just sort of architecturally and the design and the flow of the city and stuff like that. Like you go looking for it in video games because it is so remarkably different than what we have here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Yakuza 6 it's got like a full-fledged camera mode, which is actually, it feels just like the one in GTA in that it's basically you pull out your cell phone and you can do selfie mode or
awesome.
portrait mode or whatever. But you can also walk around in first person, which is kind of cool. So you can just kind of like actually feel like you're there on the street. Yeah, I mean, you also go to Onomichi, which is in Hiroshima, and it's like this like low-key little fishing village, and I'm kind of unclear what the point is over there. It's like a completely disparate location, but it's a gorgeous game, totally new engine built from the ground up. I was like so bummed that not enough people were playing like the last two games like last year, but I mean I kind of get it too because they are, they're heavily polished PS3 games.
Right.
They ported over, and so there's still like weird stuff like odd load times and you had to manually save, and they've gone back and they fixed that for 6. So now it used to be you had to load going in and out of businesses, which is tedious, and now you can be in the middle of a street fight and you can like drag dudes into the convenience store and like throw them into shelves,
awesome.
and stuff goes everywhere like you're in Rumble in the Bronx.
I think one of the reasons I was always so hesitant to jump in was because I felt like I was late to the party.
Yeah.
Like when you see 4, 5, 0, you're like, I think I should start here, but also this is a remake. Also, this is sort of like triumphantly obtuse in that I don't know what, like we just saw footage there, and in the 4 minutes it was up there was a karaoke game, a fighting game ripoff, a fully playable Puyo Puyo, a open world like street fighting River City Ransom Final Fight style like GTA game, and then spearfishing, and it's sort of just like, when do I do each of those things?
Exactly. And how
does this all connect?
Also, like jumping into the story too. Like Max, you describe it as like operatic in your preview, which is totally true. Like if you've ever seen like even like old Yakuza films or even like the work of like Beat Takeshi, right, who's actually in this one. Like they are just long epic like family sagas sort of, and that's how do you jump into the middle of that, right?
I mean, it reminds me a lot of Metal Gear in that there's like the big important very like heavy cutscenes about the fate of everything serious and story wise, and then you've also got these codec conversations that are like these goofy little side things that you can dig into, and it's like in Metal Gear they're not like quests or like actual like objectives really, but there are like little details hidden around, and in this case they're like, that's an entire thing you can dedicate your time to. Right. There's a cat cafe. Like I didn't get to see this, but yeah, like you go into the convenience store and they're selling canned cat food. I'm like, am I gonna go like cat hunting to like to raise cats in a But you're like, I don't know. At a glance, you're like, oh, it's like a serious game about beating guys. It's like it looks like I don't know, like a modern Streets of Rage or something. And it's like, no, it's much stranger, much more like charming than that. So I don't know. I hope people get on board with this. I think the fact that there's a demo is huge. I will have a written preview up on IGN, so go take a look on that.
I'm pretty bummed this got delayed because this is like one of those things that I wish people could experience right now, especially with Red Dead getting delayed.
Yes,
I want to talk about it. Yeah.
It's also we're not like, we don't really have a ton. This is the thing, man, and we've said this for a long time, but like, GTA 5 is one of the most financially successful, best-selling video games of all time. Every time something like that happens, I'm like, surely there will be tons of spin-offs and clones or things like it that we can play. And obviously Yakuza is very different, but sort of like, in an open world-ish game where you want to walk around a gritty city and beat dudes up. Like I wish we were doing that more throughout the year, and we're just not.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of some of my favorite things all rolled into one. Like the way the actual kind of like moment-to-moment play feels a lot like The Witcher, not so much in, I guess the combat is, it's real-time action combat, but then like the fact that you get sidetracked by being like, I'm gonna go play cards, or like I'm gonna go down this weird little silly side quest that's more about like introducing a character than it is about actually moving the story forward.
Right.
And then I don't know, it's tonally it's a lot like Cowboy Bebop. Like there are moments when it's like very much about like it's about gang stuff and it's very serious and like heavy, and then other times it's just straight up goofy and like nonsensical. So I hope more people jump on that, and I definitely will not be shutting up about Yakuza 6.
So when is it out?
this year.
April 17th?
It is out April 17th.
3 days before
and-
God of War and Nintendo
Yeah,
Cardboard.
that's rough, but the demo is out February 27th, which is just around the corner, so people can jam on that and check it out.
Also, more time to catch up if you guys want.
Yeah, yeah,
Also, we have our copies now.
yeah.
So what the what are we
Yeah, I
playing?
mean the game's been out since 2016, so yeah, I don't know really what's going on there.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm excited for that cat to get out of the bag and into my cat cafe. On the subject of bizarre wildlife and video games that people get sucked into, Far Cry 5, they announced the season pass, which is promising, but like interesting. So basically they're doing it looks very much like they're kind of going the Blood Dragon route here, and they've got a few different kind of pieces of kind of standalone things. There is one called Hours of Darkness, which is it says players will travel back in time to Vietnam to battle against Viet Cong soldiers. There's Dead Living Zombies, which players will face hordes of zombies in multiple B-movie scenarios. Sure. And then there's Lost on Mars, which is players will leave Earth behind to go toe-to-claws with Martian arachnids.
So okay, yeah. First of all,
And this is the DLC for a game about Montana.
yeah.
Which
So
is the opposite of all those things.
So first of all, I'm a huge Far Cry fan. Max, you are too. Chloe, are you?
I
You're in there?
enjoy them. I feel like they're kind of junk food games for you almost.
Yes,
you know?
absolutely, absolutely. That's why I think people were so surprised at this one getting slightly more political. Which I interviewed Dan Hay for a show called Expert Mode. We'll be putting that out soon, and he talked to me about how this game was only really political once politics started happening in the last year and a half, because they've been planning this game for years. It takes a long time to make a video game, and a lot of it sort of just started happening on TV. And that's weird. So this wasn't really a political game. It's just sort of we fell into that world. That said, it is a game about like psychotic religious cults and doomsday preppers. And it is very sort of tonally serious. And the more we hear about this game, there are goofy odds and ends about it. There are drugged up farm animals. There are animal banging mini games. Not where you have sex with them, but they do it with each other. You have to collect testicles to bring them to a barbecue. Of the animals.
This is news to me.
Yeah, the game gets weird, right? It's got some weird pockets around the outside of it. That being said, this DLC and season pass stuff, while first of all looking sort of a lot more robust than what we've seen from the season passes in the last two Far Cry games, is such a weird, drastic departure from the core game that I'm kind of wary of it.
Yeah.
Is it weird that I'm almost more confused by the Vietnam one than I am the other two?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think that's totally the odd duck.
Yeah.
Not to call the Vietnam War an odd duck, but there it is.
The thing about Far Cry is that there's really no cohesive. I mean, aside from the game mechanics, there's no one thing that kind of connects them all. I mean, I guess you could say in the more recent ones, it's sort of about going to an exotic location and then fighting a bunch of dudes and climbing stuff. But before that, there was stuff with like, I don't know, mutations and nanomachines, and it was kind of like a weird, almost Crisis spinoff.
Yeah, there's hunting and gathering and building your bag.
Yeah, they're just kind of like they're open world games set in places that are scary and crazy, for the most part, and that includes caveman times or
Himalayas,
or the future of.
It's always been kind of like touristy, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's exotic.
Which is a little problematic in its own right. But like they're Far Cry games.
But it's always
like
been
that's what you expect from.
It's always been like clearly fictional. Like there's never. I mean, Far Cry Primal. Nobody was like, this is a actual accurate recreation of caveman warfare.
Also, like Far Cry 3 is a game where getting a tribal tattoo as a white guy is literally like a game mechanic.
Yep.
So it's kind of like that's what you expect.
Yeah. Also worth noting is we're getting Far Cry 3 Classic Mode as part of the season pass, which I'm super stoked on. Far Cry 3 is one of my favorite games ever. It's been described as Skyrim with guns by my silly pal Adam Kovic. I always described it as sort of like a politically incorrect Mountain Dew commercial, which is, it's got like, yo, dude, it's me, Jason Brody, with my tribal tats. It's time to wakeboard and kill an alligator. But yeah, that being said, like, I don't know, the Vietnam War is a real thing that happened, and suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, it's an actual thing. Everything else that's been Far Cry has been sort of like thinly veiled fiction, You
don't know about the War of the Blood Dragon.
The Blood Dragon. We don't talk about the Blood Dragon. No, but like I don't know.
My grandfather died in the war.
I mean, it's funny because Blood Dragon. there was a point where I think it was Dean Evans, who was a pal of mine, who was the creative director of that. He tweeted out promoting the Blood Dragon soundtrack on vinyl on April Fool's Day. His friend holding up the vinyl, and in the background a monitor was on, and it said,
Desktop.
yeah, and it's the desktop background was just it was
was
Far Cry, Blood Dragon 3, Vietnam War 2.
Yeah.
And it had Ed 209 from RoboCop in like a neon jungle, and it was like everyone was like, "Is that real or what?"
I could again, if it was like that, I would be like, okay, sure. But I mean, I think the copy for the actual press release was something like go travel back in time, right? It's actually like an historical I don't know. It seems
no. You said it
strange,
yourself.
And you're actually fighting the Viet Cong
It's
too.
kinda
Like, is it
weird
just gonna
to-
straight be like?
Yeah, that's what I'm really wondering. And I mean, I know somebody in the comments is like, "You're being too PC," and I'm gonna say like, "No, that. My fiance's family is from Vietnam. They came here over the war, and it's like way too close to home. Like literally, if I'm running around killing people who are shouting in a language that she can understand but I can't, that's not cool. Like that's something that I'm gonna just skip on. However, if it's doing something interesting, if they're doing some like I don't know, a Spec Ops The Line approach where there's like an interesting narrative twist, or if it's something that's like,
I mean, if they're gonna go like Full Metal Jacket and try to, be at least kind of critical of the war, it might be interesting. And like with Far Cry 5, we see that they are trying to do some kind of commentary on something, right? Like you mentioned that the game didn't start out as political, but I mean, like I remember an interview, I think early on when it was announced, that was with the creative director. I don't recall the name, but it was about like how the initial inspiration for the game was actually like all the right-wing militias that began popping up under Obama's administration.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like they're trying to do something with that. So
yeah, for sure.
it's
I mean,
weird, though,
and they
'cause-
visited, the dev team visited Montana. They drove around in cars. They feared for their lives. Those stories are out there.
Yeah.
So I think that, they're like to say it was completely apolitical would be incorrect. But that
being said, the last one was about cavemen.
yeah.
So
That's
it's
true.
and the one before that was about like what you were in, I don't know, the Himalayas.
Yeah,
and it was
and-
dragons before that,
Which was
So,
actually sort of vaguely political too. It was sort of
Yeah.
about like independent freedom groups. There was a
it was
character
kind of like Tibet almost.
Yeah,
Right. Was
totally. There was a character that was pretty heavily inspired by Anita Sarkeesian. There was also characters that seemed inspired by Bulk and Skull from the Power Rangers, and they were cartoon idiot potheads, and doing their missions
Yeah.
were, vaguely insufferable.
it's funny to talk about, to like kind of praise a game like Yakuza for being so kind of tonally inconsistent and sort of it's kind of all over the place. But with Far Cry, I kind of like it when it's just almost like consistently like stupid.
Not to reiterate that, but I think that Yakuza succeeds because its tonal inconsistencies are consistent.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas,
yeah.
And it's the same thing I kind of see. We just saw this with Call of Duty, where they're like, we're going to go after World War II, but also we have Nazi zombies. And it's like, well, okay, I understand that there's two teams working in synchronicity here, and one of you is like, we have to get the look and the feel right, and they brought real veterans in to do testimonials and all this kind of stuff. And on the flip side, you had people being like, well, here's cartoon Nazis.
Yeah.
And they're all in the same package, right? And so that's the thing when you buy this game. It's just they're having like a difficult time, I think, totally sticking to the landing on what the tonality of this game is. And if it's just goofy nonsense through and through, cool. But when I talk to someone like Dan Hay, and I'm sort of scared to my core that militia groups like this exist, and that there are preppers, and there are you turn on the TV and you read about religious cults and stuff like that, and you hear about this kind of stuff. And then on the flip side, it's like collect testicles and blow up Mars. I'm kind of like, well, yeah, this is a video game, but also like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
And if it's nothing, great. But if it's something and then plus multiplied by nothing, then I don't know. Like,
and remember, like we're going off literally like a sentence of description for the Vietnam War thing.
Yeah, and it is our job to sort of like go, what is this? But also to give things the benefit of the doubt. And I will play all of these. Like this is not me.
Yeah,
I'm not protesting this. I'm saying I'm in.
Yeah.
No, like
but-
I want to go fishing and run over people with tractors.
Me too.
Exactly.
That
yeah,
looks
yeah.
fun as hell.
No, I mean, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not boycotting. I might not play it at home with the volume turned up, but it's. But that being said, like this is a thing with Viet Cong amidst zombies and Martian spiders, which.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'll give the Far Cry team the benefit of the doubt because I think they've done a pretty good job of sitting up straight and paying attention to what's going on and what people are having conversations about regarding games. Zombies are fine. They're going to be whatever. The spiders on Mars, I'm actually looking forward to, because that sounds like a fun time. That sounds like Starship Troopers.
That's how my grandmother was killed. So it's really sensitive to me.
You lied to me.
She's still alive. No, I'm totally with you, and I think it's like this is like we're constantly as people that work in the industry, people that have played video games, people who listen to the show, watch the show, we are constantly demanded that our medium is taken more seriously, and it attacks and approaches subject matters that are usually left to expert filmmakers, and I think like there is a Vietnam War video game out there someday that can be handled correctly. There is a take on like sort of religious death cults in Montana and stuff like that, and preppers and doomsday people. And
is Far Cry the series to tackle those issues though?
Right.
That's part of me is like, yes, we should demand more from our games, but also is Far Cry the series that we necessarily need to do that with, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of just like I don't know if we have a conversation about the death penalty on television or something like that. It's like, oh, the next up to the stand is Carrot Top.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you're the dude, Carrot Top. Like maybe not.
For me, it's more just that this game is happening and it is tackling all these different subject matters, and so I can't help but just wish, right?
Yeah.
That it, I don't know, met certain standards, but I'm not going to be disappointed or outraged if it doesn't. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
Like
also, I mean, it's funny because I'm sure some people are listening to this being like, "Stop talking about politics and games." Well, my issue is that I want games that are straight escapism, and when there are games that are tethered to things that are actual real life concerns, then that's
it's like look up Ruby Ridge, look up Waco.
Yeah.
Like this is rooted in things that happen and things that are happening now.
Totally.
Maybe not the religious cult stuff so much. Like I actually honestly feel like that's kind of their way of being controversial or seeming controversial without actually being controversial. Because it's like, are religious cults really that big of an issue? It's like fundamentalism, sure, but I mean, this is like a doomsday cult.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it's interesting, and this is why I do want to give these games the benefit of the doubt, is that when I first heard about this, I was sort of like, I had two reactions. One was like, holy crap, they're going very serious with this. And two, I was kind of like, I'm disappointed that this isn't like the goofy, totally out there premise for a Far Cry game. And then I started seeing it in action, and basically, we captured footage for our interview that's going up soon that had this scene in it where a player was like basically in the middle of a firefight on a farm where these characters were drugging up animals. And he turned the corner and a stampede of cows came towards him, and he fired the grenade launcher at the cows, and they blew up in the air, and 6 of them were on fire, 4 were flying in the air and screaming. And I was like, okay, that's a Far Cry game.
Yeah.
Like,
for me,
hell yeah.
For me, that moment was playing a preview, I think, at E3, and just like you're in this awful like American flag semi truck. I was just rolling through a town, running over farm animals and stuff. And I'm
Farm
like,
crimes.
Farm crimes.
And so like that's where I'm like, okay, they found that balance there, and so I think they can find it elsewhere. That said, yeah, I'm a little hesitant, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't.
Yeah, that one thing I'm honing in on the Vietnam thing is weird, but like the rest of it, I mean, zombies and space spiders, and Far Cry 3 Classic Edition, I'm totally cool with that because it's a sense of variety. I feel like the previous season passes we've gotten for Primal and for Far Cry 4 were like, do you want to go fight the Yeti? And I was like, kind of. I kind of want Blood Dragon or something like that.
You're 100% correct, and that's what I was saying earlier. In that, like the last few season passes for Far Cry games felt like a little bit more of the same, whereas this feels like a totally diagonal departure. What I'm like kind of bummed out about is that, and I keep saying this, but there's a lot of dinosaur skeletons in Montana. Like tons. And that would have been an awesome thing to be like, hey,
lot of people,
time travel here.
Zombies.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been like, hey, what if you put dinosaurs in your video game to Ubisoft for Far Cry and to DICE for Battlefield? And they're always like, oh, that's a great idea. And then everyone's like, well, it's been like 6, 5, 7 years. What are you?
Here's the thing. Like, we've never seen them. So even if they're not animated great, you could just be like, oh, that's how we thought they walked.
I think it'd be cool if they really just if they just mapped a dinosaur model to like a human skeleton, and they're just like, yeah, the game's finished. It's real good.
Do you guys
like those horrible Red Dead Redemption?
Oh my
glitches?
God. Yeah. Have you guys seen the Easter egg in Primal where you find a blood dragon? Like I 100% of that game, and I feel like I mentioned that a lot. But no, I really did like that game. And there's a cave in that game where you can see like this like glowing purple iridescent skeleton of a blood dragon. And I was like, oh, they're doing it. They're doing the blood dragon origin story. And it's like, nah, we're not. And it's like, okay, in the next game, Montana, where all the dead dinosaurs
Didn't they
are.
also had the Flintstones car in there?
I think, yes, they did.
Yeah, they had the Flintstones
Man,
car.
that was such a fun game.
Yabba dabba do.
What a weird
Far
game.
Cry.
Sitting here expecting serious political commentary, and then
And then there's that.
Out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's fine.
That's
I know.
Far Cry.
Video games are a very silly time. On the subject of Red Dead, I want to talk about this. That happened pretty late last week, but Red Dead Redemption got delayed from soon until later, specifically October 26th. That's interesting because it drops it squarely in the middle of sort of video game release hell week, hell season. This is late October, early November is when the games come out. That's the big time for all of them. That's Ubisoft's flagpole, where that's probably not Assassin's Creed this year, but I mean maybe a Watch Dogs, and then there's always Call of Duty, and then there's a racing game that I don't play, and then there's everything comes out then. It's just tons of games. And do you think that other games should worry, or is this sort of like, is this something so big that it's just a thing that everyone has to tolerate, basically?
Both and neither, I'd say. Like, it's weird right now because we actually don't have a completely accurate, depiction of what the fall is going to look like for video games. You named a few there. I think it's pretty safe to say we're not going to get a Battlefront this year. I think it's pretty safe to say we're not going to get an Assassin's Creed this year. I'd love to be surprised by that. I think it's safe to say that we'll definitely get a Call of Duty, which historically is the best-selling video game of the year by usually a landslide.
Unless there's a GTA game.
Unless there's a GTA game. But the weird thing about GTA games is that they not only crush NPD in the first month, but for the next 6 years. Like, GTA 5 has been the top of NPD, or somewhere in the middle of NPD, for literally, 6 years, 5 years now? I mean,
No, it's
two consoles.
It's the best game from 2013 of 2017.
Yeah.
It will be of 2018 too.
I don't know, Chloe, am I missing anything? Like, what big fall stuff? I mean, is there going to be a Battlefield game? Is there going to be?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Like, so, and we don't know what Nintendo's doing, but I have a feeling that's a completely different market. And like, if they drop, a Smash Brothers port in September to go with their online service, they
There
won't
was
be
that.
worried.
I think it was October 27th of this last year. That was it was Wolfenstein 2, Assassin's Creed Origins, and Mario
was
Odyssey.
it? Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, that's an interesting conversation there because I feel like Wolfenstein and Assassin's Creed are sort of different enough in terms of how they play that they attract different audiences. Obviously, Wolfenstein is like a major thing primarily for like the PC crowd. Like they love that. And then Mario's in another corner entirely because it's a Nintendo game. It's Mario. It's completely a separate. You're gonna buy that for your 5-year-old niece or whatever, Whereas you're probably not gonna do that with Wolfenstein unless you're sick in the head. But like with Red Dead, I mean, it could come out the same day as a new Smash Brothers game, and it's not really an issue for that.
Yeah.
It does probably get sticky for, I don't know, other third parties being like, oh, we've got like, oh, that's the same day that, I don't know, like, I mean, unless it's a new Elder Scrolls that around that time, then it gets
right. Yeah.
gets-
Okay. So, because then you're getting sort of in the
Yeah.
like the 1-to-1 open world,
Yeah.
mature game territory, and I think that's
games that
that's
people
where it gets
are
tricky.
games that people are playing 6 years later still.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we don't know what this fall looks like, so it's kind of. I almost guarantee you that there are people in conference rooms scratching their heads and figuring out how they can rearrange to avoid this.
Yeah, I mean,
to give
that's
it a wide berth. But
that's the thing. It's February, and we haven't had for just the start of the year PAX or GDC, or then rolling into E3, Comic-Con, Gamescom, all that kind of stuff. There are so many opportunities in the next few months to be like, this is our plan for the fall, and so many surprises await. So who knows yet? But I'm with you guys in that I'm pretty sure a bunch of people are kind of sitting there going like, well, we were gonna put out a game that day. I'm like, well, not anymore. Or it just gets delayed again.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It may
It's
never
been the
come
running
out.
theme so far.
One thing I'm curious about is, does this delay mean that online will be ready at launch? Are they trying to kind of stagger things so that lines up properly? They could. I mean, they've always done this thing, and people always like to harp on the PC releases that didn't come out from Rockstar. Like Red Dead, the first one never came out over there, and
Right.
it took a minute. But if you kind of track it, it usually comes out about a year later, or a matter of months later for the PC version. And I think they kind of want to line things up so that there's that momentum. In the case of online stuff, GTA 5 came out on September 17th, and they basically let everyone play it, and then on October 1st, online became available. And even that, obviously, they were like, oh, hey, you're gonna spawn as a bald guy in a field, and you're gonna lie there dead and it won't respawn, and you're like, what?
Been there.
What happened? Yeah. But I mean, they obviously they allowed it kind of breathing room, and they were like, online is a separate product that's going to take its time. I'm curious, given that this is a game developed specifically for this console generation, is online so integrated into it that this is going to be a thing that's attached at launch?
I think it'll be there day and date. I think it'll be at launch a shell of what it becomes 5 years later. If you look at GTA 5 online,
Yeah,
I mean,
GTA
that is
Online, even GTA Online, like from GTA 4,
oh my god.
still probably has a pretty active player base.
Yeah, it's kind of insane because I mean the thing is like when a game sells 1 million copies, 2 or 3 years later, you can find some people to play with. When a game sells tens of millions of copies, you're good pretty much until you're dead. Like someone's going to keep a server running for you forever. But that game, when it launched on PS4, you remember like it had the broken online lobbies where people were just kind of standing around and doing a weird walking place thing. We scored the game with no score for the online section at launch. And then a few days later, like the feature started to sort of tumble out for it. And we were like, this is sort of like a simple thing, but it's really cool. It's really novel. And then by the end, it effectively became a place where they put cutscenes and stories and like DLC for purchasable gold jets and guns, and we played with a real motorcycle gang that started in that world.
I mean, they very quietly made a MMO.
Yeah,
It's not just like the online component of GTA like it once was. It's like become this entire living, breathing world where
And that's
people role play.
kind of what they want from the Red Dead Online, right? I mean, they haven't talked too much about it, but I don't know.
Presumably, yeah.
I think what's interesting about that is how does that, like a GTA game grows in a modern sense because you can be like jets, motorcycles,
Right.
hover cars. Like what do you do with cowboys?
Jet horse. Honestly, the only really strong opinion I have about Red Dead Redemption's Online, what I want the most is the filmmaker that GTA 5 had.
yeah.
Please, Rockstar, let me make my own stupid Western movies
Oh,
with like added like filters,
Oh
like
god, that sounds so
like
good.
sepia tone.
See, I like the idea of people remaking classic action movies as westerns in
yeah,
Red
or
Dead.
even redoing like a scene from The Searchers or something,
Yeah.
but just
Right,
with
right.
awful mods.
What if Terminator 2 was a western?
I like the idea of them just adding more animals. And that's the other cool thing is like, I don't know, there's some animals in GTA, but not really like scary ones. And there's ones that you can like interact with and do peyote and become or whatever the hell.
Sure.
I'm not sure how that worked. But this game is like hunting is a primary aspect of it. So I wonder if there'll be like online hunts, if like they'll just keep adding more animals, if they want to add like alligators, zombie bears. I don't know how many of them have to like sort of like, thematically fit into the time and location and whatever.
I mean, it's fascinating to look at kind of the Rockstar's track record because in addition to, Red Dead had Undead Nightmare, which was an entire standalone thing that kind of threw the style guide out the window.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they were going that direction with GTA 5, where they're like, oh, there's all these UFOs, there's some crazy stuff in there. And then there was never any single player DLC. There was nothing with that. I mean, they absolutely could have created a story in that world, but instead they focused on the online component. And I mean, much to the chagrin of some players. But like I think with Red Dead 2, again, it's worth noting this is developed for a system that has an existing like online structure that works. I mean, that was kind of they figured it out towards the end of last gen, but I mean, I think that online is finally where it needs to be for games. And I mean, people, I don't know, there's that drop in, drop out kind of social mentality, and I'm wondering how much of Red Dead 2 is going to lean on that.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a juggernaut either way, and it's going to go and grow for years. So.
Yeah.
Can't wait to cover it.
I'm excited to see that. Anyway, out this week, we got a lot of variety this week, a whole lot of it. Aegis Defenders. This is an action platformer with tower defense elements. I like the action platformer part. I'm not wild about tower defense stuff, but
I'm playing this game. It's interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm kind of warming up to it. It's not, I thought it would be a lot more sort of action platformer, but it is. And then it kind of slows to a crawl, and you have to interact with things in the environment and sort of set up like it's not just like running up and jumping on an enemy and killing him like you would in most platforming games.
I really like the aesthetics. It's got kind of almost like Miyazaki vibes.
Yeah, totally. And I think they worked with some teams to bring some sort of, as like a lot of indie games are doing right now, to bring like some friends over from other indie games, which is pretty cool. There's some cool stuff happening here. So yeah,
Cool. And then there's also out this week is Bleed 2, which is a frantic action platformer. I'm going to just spoil this right now. There's a lot of action platformers out this week. Bleed 2 has, I think a lot of these have already been out on Steam already. You know, it's kind of usual pile of
Yeah.
things that have been on PC. But this seems much more almost like a platformer bullet hell kind of thing. Then there's Dandara, which I've actually had my eye on for a little while now. This is a kind of Metroidvania action platformer, but it's got like weird gravity stuff, like where the level will flip on you.
Yeah, it's all like gravity puzzles.
Yeah.
Also, I mentioned this on NVC already,
Yeah.
but it's from a Brazilian studio, and the character that you play, Dandara, is actually based on like a real Afro-Brazilian warrior who like fought slavery.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in how they,
Did she
if
do
at
it?
all, incorporate that.
Did she do it with a hook shot through like
I
Inception hallways?
Don't think so,
Okay.
but
you know, some
Yeah,
people
it's
they tell
definitely-
stories and things change a little bit.
this
It's okay.
This looks like pretty
just
intense.
love the
though.
idea of it being like a sci-fi take on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that.
I'm
I
super
don't
into
know.
this. Aesthetically, it's like really awesome. It reminds me of some of the weirder levels in like Super Castlevania 4, which is pretty cool. And a lot of the diagonal platforming worries me a little bit because I have a feeling I'll be not great at it. But
Celeste though,
Celeste, though, there we
Yeah.
go.
Then there
It
is
so good.
Heroin Anthem 0 Episode 1, which is like a 2.5D action RPG action platformer, which has those kind of like hand-painted
Buzzwords.
designs. It looks a little bit like Vanillaware, but with kind of more, I don't know, more technical stuff to it. Again, this has been out on Steam for a cool minute. And then, of course, there is Mercenary Kings Reloaded Edition. This is...
I'm playing this too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you
this
playing
one's
on,
cool.
You playing on Switch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's identical to the PS4 version. The pixel art in this game is gorgeous.
and
Yeah.
it's the same as the PC version too, right?
Yes,
Yeah, the
yeah.
game looked really great.
Yeah.
This was out a while ago. Like the I guess the initially loaded edition, not the reloaded one. But yeah, it's very Metal Sluggish.
With a little bit of like Scott Pilgrim thrown in.
Yes,
Or the video
very,
game
very
Scott
much,
Pilgrim, which
very
I
much.
believe they removed from all downloadable services, which sucks because it's like one of my favorite beat 'em ups ever.
Really dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is I mean, this is fun to get a bunch of friends together. I feel like kind of it scratches that like I don't know Castle Crashers.
Yeah.
Kinda Metal Slug-ish.
Yeah, a little Contra, a little Castle Crashers.
Yeah, I like the palette and the designs there. I think it looks really cool, but I never really completely got into it. There's a game called Marooners, which is a bunch of pirate-themed party mini games. I love that this is kind of like while everyone's over on Xbox talking about Sea of Thieves, they're like, well, what about this? It's got party games, pirate hats. What else we got? There's Dragon Sinker, which is an old school kind of 8-bit JRPG. I think this has been out. I think this was out for 3DS at one point. I believe this is also coming to Vita. So if that sounds appealing to you, there you go. The Seven Deadly Sins: Knights of Britannia. I am told this is based on an anime. I have yet to confirm or deny that for myself.
That's a good guess.
Yeah.
But no, it's. I think we're going to be doing a live stream of this at some point.
Sin
this week.
action.
Yeah.
Into that.
What does that mean?
some
Your
sin.
parents help you set it up. Ooh, yeah. It's got lots of sins. So I believe the sins are in this are actually, they're like people. Like they're the seven deadly sins. It's not just about like just doing nasty things. I don't know who's. I'm actually kind of curious because I like that as like a rule set. I like that movie Seven. I like it's like the 7 C's or the food groups or whatever.
What?
I'm just gonna let you keep going.
Way to
You're doing
classify
great.
things.
Just keep doing.
I don't know
keep that up.
which one are these people. I don't know who they are.
That's
Anyway,
Sloth.
if you enjoy anime, you can watch this and play it as well. It's a 3D action fighting game based on the anime.
IGN's game
Thanks
of
for letting me
what
flounder
was
there,
that?
guys. Really appreciate it.
No, it's great. You put it on the list. I wanted you to just really ride that one out.
No, that's
you.
a big one. I'm sure a lot of people actually who are paying attention to that kind of thing are. That's one of the bigger releases of the week. And then there's Under Night in Birth EXE late. It's one of those like I believe this has been out.
You don't even need to say that it's a visual novel because I can tell by the name.
Yeah. How did you guess? Yeah. This is a 2D fighter and visual novel.
Sounds like a disease.
Yeah, you can. I mean, what's really cool about when they obviously drop stuff on PC first is that you can read reviews for it before. If it just
Right.
kind of drops quietly on PS4, you're like, well, where did it come from? And you go, it's probably the same game, give or take. And then finally, out this week is Shadow of the Colossus, which is a very good game.
Haven't heard of this one.
Yeah, we talked about that a great deal, I believe, last week, and I think the week before.
Kind of like a visual novel, right?
Yeah, it's a visual novel. You're trying to romance these big rocky boys.
Kind of anime a little bit.
Yeah.
It is kind of anime.
It's much like the anime.
It's got hairy, bloody
Got, like,
legs
good
in it.
Papyrus.
They're like
Lizards.
does
have that font.
Depending on the size of your pockets, these are much like pocket monsters. If you have huge pants, you could
No,
fit
I
one
mean-
of them deep within there.
Real talk, this game is incredible, and it's I've seen a little bit of backlash online about some of the sort of like facial animations and some of the stuff that the main character does. It's just power through it. This is such a gorgeous take on one of the best looking games
As
already.
people think that it's like weird looking, or that it's not, or that it's too realistic?
It's too. I think that it's too realistic.
Yeah, see, I've read a lot of interesting discussion online about the graphical fidelity and how that, for some gamers it's definitely like, well, I need to play games that look like this, but for others it's like it kind of loses some of that like expressionist quality that the original had.
I'm with you on that. I can agree with that.
I definitely, I don't know, like going back to it's really amazing to see like the graphics comparison, right? Like what this game looked like before versus what it looks like now. But I kind of enjoy how dreamlike the original was, just like the textures and everything seeming kind of like blurry almost.
Yeah, I mean, we've like long talked about this sort of, mechanism in video games, but when, limitation breeds creativity, and
yes, when you see that in like this, like the Silent Hill HD collection got rid of the fog, which was originally because like there was something weird with like draw distance, so they just fixed it by just having fog everywhere. And they got rid of it because they didn't need it anymore, and it's like, well, that's like what to take the fog out of Silent Hill, and like you just gotta.
It's like taking the mist out of the movie The Mist.
Yeah,
it's kind of missing the point there.
It's missing the point.
But yeah, I mean the game, it's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I don't know. I'm with you on that. I think it's sort of just like you look at like the old original Looney Tune drawings and cartoons, and then you look at like the weird '90s like 3D CG tunes or whatever with a Z, and you're like, okay, you lost something there. But
I just love the look of old PS1 and 2 games.
Me too. I'm with you on that. Max and I saw a gallery that somebody had 3D printed a bunch of Final Fantasy VII like figurines in all low poly, and I was like, damn, I really want those toys. So that said, I mean, this game is unbelievably good looking, and I think, your mileage may vary with how well you perceive or can ignore or just don't get bothered with the nuances in the way the facial animations work and the way the characters move and interact with each other. But, other than that, like, damn, this game's really good looking.
I was actually very thrown off by the fact that Wander speaks. I don't remember him speaking in the original.
It's been a while.
He shouts, he's like, "Oh, go!"
I mean, he shouts, the name of his horse, but I don't remember him speak. I don't know.
Well, it's weird how in the new one he's like, I don't like these Colossus. I'm going to climb onto their heads and stab them right in the hole.
Somebody's got to take these big guys down once and for all.
I'll climb his hairy legs and hold on to his cankles.
Yeah.
It's weird that he talks.
I'm going to stab him right in the shin with my glowing blade of justice. Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're nitpicking this game, it's like just get better problems. I wish that more games got like beautiful overhauls like this and re-releases. Like, I mean, if you took like, I don't know, Metal Gear Solid 1 and did like something this faithful with it, put it in Fox Engine.
Wouldn't you miss
Don't make me sad.
Wouldn't you miss the polygons though?
Have you seen the Snake Eater pachinko machine?
Yeah.
With like the HD cutscenes of like the boss, and I'm just like, why Konami? Why?
Yeah, there's a lot they do that's like, but that was up there. That was like, oh really? That you're gonna make that and you're gonna put it in a screaming loud pachinko machine.
Pachinko halls are they are hell.
Yeah.
I think on Earth.
They are the
hell of 1,000 rattling balls.
They are some of the most threatening places on Earth. When I went to Tokyo 3 or 4 years ago, I went the entire trip without getting sick, despite the fact that I ate strange food and got very drunk every single night.
Strange food.
And on the last night, no, I think I almost ate horse one night. And one night, Mitch Dyer and I, former IGN editor, walked through a pachinko hall. And like it's all sealed off, and you open the door, and then you walk in, and it's just nonstop, just cigarette smoke and screaming, and it's just you open the door, it's like
the sound hits you like just physically assaults you.
It smells and sounds like being inside of a train on fire, and then you walk to the other end of it, and the door closes behind you, and you're back outside in Tokyo, which is
I think you can take like one breath, and like inhale more cigarette smoke than like a long time smoker has in like their whole life.
And we just immediately both got sick. Like immediately. I just walked out and I was like, ugh. And then I just had a fever, and Mitch threw up in the shower the next day.
I think that was for other reasons. Anyway, the point of the story is Shadow of the Colossus. It's a very good game. We're going to wind things down here. If you head over to youtube.com/IGNBeyond, we have us answering off-topic questions such as how we would grittily reboot Crash Bandicoot.
Ooh, I can't wait to talk about that.
The Crash Band reboot. Anyway, you can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Brian is Agent Bizzle. And Chloe, are you just _ Chloe?
I'm, _ Chloe. Yep.
CHLOI. There we go.
Do you know who has just regular Chloe?
An egg. Just
An egg?
yeah, I
Wow.
don't think they've
Stupid eggs.
tweeted.
The egg.
It might even be me from several years before I decided to actually use Twitter. Who knows?
Oh.
Possible.
Well, you know what's better than an egg that tweets is an egg that's never tweeted.
That's true. Anyway, that was Beyond This Week. Thank you all so much for listening, watching, whatever, and we will see you next week when everyone has recovered from Super Bowl's disorder.
Super Burrows?
Super Bowls.
Got it.